This video will be a little bit different from the previous one because honestly, things did not go the way as previously planned.
I didn't even miss damage.
He's off his head.
Don't look at it. Don't.
Oh, what the f— What was meant to be simply the next part of the Terraria video became more about self-persistence, challenge, overcoming said challenges, and achieving tribulation. If you want to see the first video, hopefully you have a spare hour, first of all. Definitely watch that video first because you will need some context for our current point in time. But let's just go back to the part where the Wall of Flesh was defeated. To catch you up, in the last video, the Wall of Flesh was defeated, finishing off the last of Classic, or pre-hard mode. Yes! After defeating all the Wall of Flesh, the world eventually locks into hard mode. If you're unfamiliar with Terraria, you might have heard the terms pre-hard mode and hard mode, but might not know what that means. Hard mode is just a ramped up version of Terraria that unlocks after being the Wall of Flesh. On the surface, nothing has changed. The sky is still blue, the critters still roam, you still have an empty void inside your ever black soul. But if you look at the bottom left of your screen, you'll see the message that says, "The ancient spirits of light and dark have been released." This pretty much indicates that your world is in hard mode now. This new mode introduces stronger mobs, more events, more treasure, new gear, new furniture, new NPCs, new Basically, it feels like a whole new content update just appeared out of thin air. And the knowledge of all that stuff was not realized at that time. There's a lot more to Terraria than you might expect. Playing Terraria, especially pre-hard mode for the first time, it does seem like there's quite a fair amount going on with the game. And sure, it is a bit challenging, but the game does hold your hand to help you out from time to time so that you can get comfortable with it. However, the moment you go from that to hard mode, you'll soon realize that there's way more to this game than you think. And then suddenly, the same hand disappears. And at this point, you'll probably have to rework and relearn a few things. Maybe always feel like you're starting from zero again because of how much that actually changes. And that's what it felt like for the first time. There was some catching up to do because it had been several months since the game had seen activity. And there was definitely a lot of relearning to do as well. And there was no good starting point to work off of. Fortunately, a Twitch mod who was watching my streams at twitch.tv/CUYT was able to help get the foot through the door. For simplicity's sake, we'll call him Crystal, the Terraria player who has had about 1,000 hours on Terraria, proving themselves as an expert on the game and a very good asset to the playthrough. They were able to offer some really good suggestions, including building an arena that would be dedicated to future boss fights. However, their best contribution was the AFK farm underground. This AFK farm was definitely the first big project since the last playthrough. This AFK farm was a place where mobs would converse in a large area, coming to a middle point, and then slowly dying in a death trap. Now, this AFK farm was very important for a number of reasons. One, get some important items for the early game. Another reason was to gain immense amounts of coins and wealth so that NPCs were actually viable. Both these things were very important in order to become stronger throughout the playthrough. The process of this AFK farm started out with bombing the underground. The next step was building a square box and then setting a lava pit in the middle, and then creating another box underneath the pit to collect items and coins. Because you can actually pick up items through ceilings and walls as long as it's not too thick. And then you just kind of sit underneath the lava and then let the mobs come to you. And boom, you've got a functional AFK farm. Above all of that, Crystal suggested one thing that topped all of that stuff for the early game. And it was a little lake called the Shimmer. A nice shiny pink lake that holds magic. The purpose of the Shimmer is to convert certain accessories into other accessories. You throw an accessory or item into the Shimmer, it sinks to the bottom, and the transmutation takes effect and spits out something new. Either if you used a crafted item, it'll just give you back the stuff you used to make it. With accessories, it converts them into other accessories. And this was by far one of the biggest things for the early game because it would speed up progression by a long mile. The only problem was that it was on the world's edge. So it was about a good 15-minute drive away or a 30-minute walk if you're poor. And traveling all that distance to and from was not ideal given that the world wasn't especially flat. So the best solution was just to build a tunnel. Admittedly, it didn't get finished in one go, mostly because there was other things to do. laziness. However, there was quite a bit of progress. It started from the AFK farm to the sand biome. However, it is a big project and the shimmer wasn't needed at this stage, so back to the AFK farm it is. At this stage, the AFK farm was proving to be very useful. Most of the cave mobs would just show up walking like idiots and just give free loot. However, during some of these sessions, some new mobs reared their ugly heads.
You are.
One of them was the Mimic. Now, the Mimic is a bit of a different kind of mob. See, it presents itself as a chest, and it's meant to kind of lure the player in very slowly, close enough where it will open its gaping mouth and then devour the player like a big bit. This is a bad analogy. They were actually pretty annoying to deal with, to be completely honest. However, when you do kill them, you get some good accessories and tools for the early game progression. And some of these accessories would be used for a little item called the Ink Shield. The Ink Shield was actually one of the big reasons the AFK farm was built. It's basically the biggest buff accessory that you could possibly create, because a lot of the buffs are in that shield from other accessories that you use to craft this thing. However, the crafting tree is so abhorrently complicated that just trying to obtain them normally wouldn't have worked. Also, by the way, this AFK farm produced a lot of eggs for some reason. I don't know if the game's trying to convert me into a vegetarian, but food does have a purpose in this game. Eating food can give you stat improvements, and depending on the food item, it might be greater or lesser. Eggs just happened to be right in the middle. There was a ton of excitement getting the first few items early on for the shield, and I don't know how to describe this very well, but you know that one phase that goes, this playthrough won't take long given this rate. And also given the fact that the person playing this character is a Muppet, this would probably take a while. And it wasn't even just getting this specific accessory that would also need upgrading. Every other aspect, tools, weapons, and armor would need to be improved as well. Luckily, the AFK farm was perfect for finding new tools and weapons to experiment with and use early on, including swords, magic wands, guns, yo-yos, and the sword. However, this specific weapon was not from the AFK farm. It was actually crafted from 4 different swords. It's called the Knight's Edge. To make it, you need the Muramasa, Blade of Grass, Volcano, and one of the swords from either the Corrupted or Crimson biomes. That part really depends on what kind of biomes you have. However, with the Muramasa, you can find it in dungeons. With the Blade of Grass, you just have to find some jungle sports and stingers from the jungle. And with the Volcano, you can make it from Hellstone bars. From hell, obviously. It technically isn't a hard mode weapon, but it'll be used for a hard mode weapon later on. The best way to describe this stage of the early game was just sitting in the AFK farm and farming items for gold to trade and upgrading gear to be even stronger. Good thing about getting all this gold is that NPCs are actually a lot more viable now, especially reforging. It's much easier to access reforging and get a better item. And actually, it's very important to learn reforging because it's a very interesting system. It's divided into tiers, and depending on the item, that rarity can max out at certain levels. And at this point, it was good to test out the reforging system, and what better item to reforge than the newly crafted Knight's Edge.
There we go, Knight's Edge. Let's go.
At this point, enough hours were spent getting up new gear, AFKing through the farm, and it was probably time to try one of these bosses in hard mode. And the first boss to enter the ring was Skeletron Prime. It was a robot version of Skeletron, and it seemed to be the easiest... Easiest? What? The easiest based on previous knowledge. So it seemed like a nice light starter.
Oh, cool, there it is. I do have this guy. Wait. The fucking corrupted, man.
Okay, so the first few attempts didn't go great, yeah. The attacks did feel familiar though, but they had been spiced up by the looks of it, and made this version of Skeletron more unpredictable. That and also maybe the gear in use was not good enough. But hey, that's probably not the problem. Let's just fight the Destroyer instead.
Holy shit. Ah, shit. That didn't go down too well.
Okay, that didn't work either. It was pretty clear that a lot of work would need to be done to be adequate enough to fight these bosses, letting them defeat them. You might have also noticed that these two fit within a category of mecha bosses. There's actually another one called the Twins, making them the big three of the mecha bosses. Even though the gear wasn't well equipped, there are a lot more new events in hard mode that can give you some decent gear. One of the first few was the Pirate Invasion, and that one's pretty self-explanatory, but to simply put, Pirate Invasion, Pirates invade the world, plundering, yar. It wasn't a walk in the park either. The sheer number of pirates I had to fight off was overwhelming. Some of the enemies were just annoying, one of them being the pirate captain who was just a tank. And to be... I just spilled my fucking Pepsi. And to be honest, the only interesting items were the decoration, which was just all gold related stuff. The second event was the solar eclipse, which just means it was night for a whole day. Also, the event introduces event-only monsters, one of which runs like an absolute creature. That's not really important, I just thought it was funny. This event was my least favorite, most because it halted progress whenever it happened, and it was just like 10 minutes of having to endure continuous waves of enemies. And the Blood Moon also gets amped up in hard mode, being more difficult, but also dropping more coins. Yep, that's about it. From word of mouth, the AFK farm could be converted to a jungle biome AFK farm, which had items for the Ache Shield and would be a good source of gold coins. Upon hearing the potential, the farm was quickly converted from corrupt to jungle. Also with these renovations, new spider walls were added so that spiders could spawn in the AFK farm, because they also provided some really good items to sell for that good gold. Another very important part to increasing the chances against the mech bosses was life fruit. They can only be found in jungle biomes, and upon consuming them, they give you overhealth. Comparatively speaking, it's a lot smaller than the jungle that came with the world already. Just a little bit. So instead of waiting in the AFK farm, it was best to just go to the actual jungle and look for life fruit there.
Oh, wait, I think that's it. Let's go. My first life fruit. Oh my god. From what I learned. Oh. Was there a life fruit in here? Let's go.
I briefly went over consumables through eggs, but healing potions exist too. Over this playthrough, it became apparent that there was a lot more to potions than what you might think. And if the armor and tools weren't good enough, maybe the potions could slightly increase the chances and maybe even push over that threshold to beat those bosses. So I gathered the consumables, potions, eggs, any sort of like consumable that might give a fighting chance. And the destroyer seemed to be a good starting point. And funny enough, it worked. This destroyer got beat the fuck up, and then Skeletron Prime within the same night.
There it is.
Now the twins were a bit scary because there were two of them, so it'd be a bit challenging to deal with two bosses firing projectiles at you at the same time. So it didn't feel like it would be enough to defeat them with what was at hand, but there was only one way to find out, really. that surprisingly went a lot smoother. Okay, board, let's just do them again. Ooh, a trophy. Defeating all those mech bosses provided a new kind of metal called hollowed bars, which were the next step in the progression ladder. This metal was especially crucial for crafting new gear, especially crafting a new drill. This drill would allow access to a new ore in the jungle called chlorophyte. Wow, that is the first time I said it since playing Terraria, and I got that first try, I think. The hollow bars in the mech fights were merely an extra step into acquiring better gear for the rest of the playthrough, and getting chlorophyte wasn't too hard. It was more so the mobs in the jungle caves that were a bit of a pain in the ass. However, chlorophyte spawned pretty frequently in sort of splotches, and crafting these new items with the chlorophyte was definitely a noticeable upgrade. However, there were still other things that needed to be obtained, like the Ankh Shield, which half of the tree hasn't even been gathered yet, so it's best to pick up the pace now. By the way, the crafting tree of this single item is 18 items total. Holy sh! However, part of that process involved the shimmer, which is underground, and again, the rocky terrain is still annoying. So better now than never to finish off that tunnel. It won't make it faster by a huge margin, but it will definitely save some time and make progression just that little faster. And now that was done, it was time to lock in and actually finally get this Ankh Shield crafted, because this thing will aid the rest of the playthrough. The jungle AFK farm was the biggest factor in streamlining the process of making this one item, and the shimmer was also super helpful, because remember when I said earlier that you can convert accessories into other accessories? If there was ever a duplicate of an accessory that could be converted to another accessory that were both needed for the Ankh Shield, the shimmer was right there to convert it, and it made it so much easier and quicker to get this Ankh Shield. And bada bing, bada boom, bippity ba, hippity doo, labby tabby tata, the Ankh Shield was finally crafted. It was really evident that the ball was really starting to roll at this point, but it was going to roll even more after a viewer had suggested a set of armor that had good benefits that wasn't super hard to get, and that's the turtle armor. You're never going to believe this. This armor requires a combination of chlorophyte bars and turtle shells, both of which happen to be found in the jungle. One from ores, if that wasn't obvious, as well as the shells come from turtle, if that wasn't obvious. This set of armor reduces damage taken by 15%, but also made the attackers take double damage, which was also nice. This was sort of the part of the playthrough where everything just started to click in. Like, everything was starting to make sense. Everything down from the new mechanics, new items, the new bosses. It just all made sense now. Speaking of bosses, it was time to fight some more bosses. The next one on the chopping block, Plantera. Now, Plantera can be only summoned from jungle biomes. You have to find this little specific pink plant that looks like this. Now, granted, you can only find the specific plant underground, and finding in those nooks and crannies is not ideal. So, part of the cave system was carved out and used for an arena. Not as big as the one back at the main base, but big enough to move around vertically and horizontally in. However, this one did have more vertical ground because of the way Plantera moves. It could be very easy to get caught out in their projectiles. And with those preparations done, time to consume the consumables, and it's time to test out the new armor set against this boss.
Oh, it does move. Thank God. Oh. Oh yeah, he's hitting a lot harder now. Sweet, let's go. First try, by the way.
It was pretty close, but in the end, Plantera was defeated. And on the first try as well, which was nice. Compared to the mech bosses, this was a lot more easygoing and a bit more easier to manage. Now, to be honest, most of what Plantera drops is completely mid. However, there is one thing that Plantera does drop that will help with progression. And that item is a key that unlocks the jungle temple. Now, you might have already seen it during the tunnel montage. That's where the next boss is. That boss in question is the golem. The golem hides in this temple, as well as traps and spooky enemies. One of these enemies drops the item called the Power Cell, which is needed to use on the Lizard Shrine. And the Lizard Shrine is what is needed to summon Golem. You could also find them in chests if you're a loser, but you know, just be careful with the traps. Now, this boss in particular doesn't move too much. It does bounce from here and there, but it mainly uses parts of its body to extend so it can reach you. So much like Plantera, it was best to make a customized arena. It is possible to get away with the smaller size around this time because there isn't much to worry about when it comes to vertical or horizontal attacks from Golem. You just have to be more aware of when the attacks are going to happen and where they're going to be coming from. And so you unlock the temple, you go through the maze, you get to the bottom, set up the arena, and then you fight Golem.
There it is. Oh, now this is exciting. It's off his head. We got it. Let's fucking go though.
And the fight was over, and it actually ended a lot faster than anticipated. And he dropped the piece for the next armor set, the Beetle Husk. But it wasn't enough, so Golem had to die a few more times.
So nice one again.
After the slaughter, there was enough to finally craft the full set of beetle armor. Although, it should be mentioned that there are two routes that you can take with this set. You can make a chestplate variant that focuses more on offense with less defense, or the other variant with more defense but a higher chance for enemies to target you. However, that doesn't apply in this scenario, so high defense it is. To be completely honest with you, it was at this point that anxiety started rising. And by anxiety, specifically the thoughts of whether it was possible to make it through and beat every boss and win the game. I mean, this is the furthest playthrough yet, and there was still a good amount to finish. There could be a possibility of getting stuck in a stalemate and just endlessly trying to push the final hurdle and never getting through. But there wasn't any way of knowing unless progress continued, so there was no stopping. Now, after making the beetle armor, the next boss on the chopping block was Duke Fishron. Duke Fishron only spawns in the ocean, and only if you have a very specific bait, the truffle worm, which can be found in glowing mushroom biomes underground. You'll know if you're in a glowing mushroom biome if you see a lot of blue light emitting. And truffle worms don't spawn very often, you have to kind of wait for them to spawn in. At the time, the best method was just to run around and wait for truffle worms to spawn and then catch them in a net. Once that's obtained, it's brought to the ocean and you just do a little bit of fishing. And no, bait power isn't ominous at all. Don't look at it, don't look at the number, don't even think about it. Then, Duke Fishron pops out and you fight him. And boy do you fight him.
Oh yeah? Yeah? Let me increase my stats real quick. Oh! I didn't mean to run into those.
And you will quickly learn that Duke Fishron is nothing to fuck with. Say, Duke Fishron is a bigger fish to fry. The biggest issue here is that Duke has a lot of patterns and 3 stages during the entire boss battle. He is no small fry. However, persistence never fails.
Fuck!
Duke's fighting patterns seemed to make more sense over time, but still, it was apparent that this boss was more locked in, so the only response is to lock in the Aether.
Ugh, that was so... That, I did even less damage with my melee weapons. This Uzi is not gonna cut it.
And there was some major changes that needed to be made. One of those major changes at this point was fishing. I touched on potions lightly during the consumables portion. However, the thing with potions is that most of them can be crafted from fish. Hey there, editing CUYT here. I just wanted to come on here and clarify something. Not every single fish can be used for crafting potions, and the majority of the potions crafting list don't include fish. I am mainly talking about buff potions, but even then, most buff potions aren't crafted with fish. I would say maybe about half of them can be crafted with fish, but pretty much every single one that I can see uses some sort of shrubbery / flower item. I just wanted to come and fix that that blunder there on the script there. That is my bad. But yeah. And surprisingly, that makes fishing very viable. So it was important to write a list down of the most important potions that would be needed. Mainly buff potions. Most of these potions also require different foraging plants, so there was a lot of foraging done as well. After getting a decent amount from the list, it'd be helpful to test out all these potions combined. So it was back to the jungle to test these potions out on Plantera. And the difference these potions made was very noticeable. For sure, it promised a bigger glimpse of hope. But it seemed both Plantera and Golem had possibly pointed a mental image that the rest of the playthrough was going to be more manageable, but that was not the case, because this blue bastard completely blew that assumption out of the water. But certainly, after enough fishing, learning the stages more thoroughly, and fighting him even more, it was about time to really take this fight seriously. It was time to lock in.
Whoever told me that range was the only effective class, you can fucking suck my dick.
Oh my god, bro. Oh,
After a very, very long battle, Duke was finally defeated, and the loot that was rewarded? Plentiful. The loot from killing Duke was a new pair of wings, which increased flight time, allowing more convenient travel, which was something that was on the upgrade list for a while because if you don't know much about wings in this game, there's a long list of wings. It's an accessory that allows you the ability to fly, and if you look at the wiki, there is a hierarchy tier of which wings are the best and worst. The pair that Duke happens to drop, one of the best in the game. Killing Duke relieved a lot of stress. It felt like pulling stuff off the shoulders and just feeling a nice sense of relief. But Duke isn't the last boss. So, who's next? This is the Empress of Light. Using stars and magic dust, she is subjectively even worse. Most of her attacks aren't direct. She's heavily projectile based. So now you gotta calculate a whole new set of moves. And since the potions worked really well with Duke Fishron, it felt appropriate to do even more fishing to build a bigger stock of potions against the Empress. The fishing process took a good while this time around, but it felt right to take a lot of time on this because building a surplus of potions was super important. However, that wasn't the only preparation that was made. A suggestion from another viewer resulted in the summoning of Martian Madness. And to be completely honest, this image pretty much sums up the event. And also, to point out how weird the summoning process for this event is, you have to get to the sky, like super high in the sky where you're kind of floating in space a little bit, and then you need to build a platform with like water that's barely touching your toes, and then wait for a Martian, which is the alien person here, and then let it pass your field of vision, and then it spawns the event. I don't really get it.
Holy shit, I'm losing out fast. These guys aren't too bad. Ooh. Now, what's up? There we go. All sorted.
After the event was done with, a nice little cannon was acquired, which shoots lots of damage for a lot of mana. An interesting weapon, and could be good for the Empress, but now it's time to continue the fight.
Yeah, that's some bullshit. Fuck! Okay. Oh, fuck! Fuck! Oh my god, what am I doing myself? Alright, let's see what you're gonna do. Ah, fuck, no! I actually could have been there just then. Damn it.
You know, after fighting the Empress 4 times, that feeling started creeping up again. That anxiety was noticeably rising again. But there was no time to give up. Those struggles were defeated once. They could be defeated again.
Oh, I finally did it.
That sure was hard, but it was finally done. Another boss off the list. Unfortunately, the loot was terrible. However, there were some better items off the loot table from the Empress, but it required you to summon the Empress in daylight. It seemed like a fair deal at first, however...
Bruh. Huh?
Yeah, that didn't go too well. And at this point, it was better just to move on. After the Empress, honestly, it was just back to fishing. There was a need to stock up on potions again, because at this point, they were so valuable to move into progression that a lot more time was spent on fishing towards the end of this playthrough. It was peaceful. It gave a lot of time to think about how to move forward or how to make progression easy, and most importantly, how to approach the next phase of bosses, because the next phase of bosses, at least the last 3 on this set list, it doesn't compare. The next boss on the list, the Cultists. And the Cultists are really the beginning of the end game here. And whilst it seems that the Cultists are just a boss on their own, they are a stage 1 of a 3-stage boss fight. And the 3 stages go like this. It's the Cultists at number 1, the Pillars at stage 2, and finally, stage 3, Moonlord himself. The Cultists reside at the old temple where Skeletron used to be, so the plan was to travel there, set up a quick arena, and then get down to business.
That was really quick. Come on, buddy. Ah, fuck. Ugh. There we go.
After defeating the cultists, that's when the pillars spawn, and they spawn across the map. And so the next obvious thing to do was just to travel and beat every single one.
Oh, we're just jumping straight in, okay. Oh my god, I can fucking see. Here we go, done. Okay, got it.
Each pillar you fight, it gets even harder. To provide more context about how the pillars work, each pillar has a shield that you have to break after beating 100 of its corresponding enemies. There is also a difficulty scale, as previously mentioned. The Stardust is the easiest, then it goes to Vortex, then Nebula, and finally, Solar. However, during the playthrough, it felt like the Nebula felt like the hardest one of the bunch. Each pillar you defeat will drop the corresponding fragment of that pillar, which is used in crafting new gear for the Moon Lord. Some of the crafts here are worth more than others, but there's no doubt that all these crafts have some sort of value depending on the class you are playing.
Oh yeah, you had to hit it from the edge. Yes.
After defeating pillars, it was time to take it easy because there was a plan and a course of actions that needed to be set for the Moon Lord. But thankfully, it's not like defeating the pillars is just gonna instantly spawn the Moon Lord or anything.
Oh, what the fuck? Moon Lord just spawned, fucking hell. Oh, what the fuck is this, bruh? Ah, don't suck me. Let me get away. Okay.
Okay, I stand corrected. Although it was unexpected, it was good to get a gauge of what was to come and expect, even if it might be an uphill battle, presumably. With more health, more attack patterns, and just the sheer size of Moon Lord means that there was going to be some recalibration. So this situation called for and crafting potions, as per usual, of course. Lots of time to think deep thoughts. If the events that previously happened are now expected, would things go differently? So it's time for a repeat. Beat the cultists, eradicate 1, 2, 3, 4 pillars, and then and surprisingly, things didn't go differently. It was clear that some things needed to change, and one of those things was the arena. The current arena was good for the previous bosses, but Moonlord works a lot differently. Moonlord is very complicated. He has a lot of attacks and different patterns, but the constant thing about Moonlord is that he likes to follow the player. And so after some research and looking at YouTube videos, a new arena would to be built, just a single platform spanning a long distance horizontally. One YouTube video suggested using asphalt blocks, which boosted the player's movement speed. This was crafted with 2 stone blocks and 1 gel. And of course, more fishing was done as well so that the potion stock wouldn't run dry. After those preparations, as well as crafting new items, I think it was time to fight the Moonlord again. But I think at this point it was time to rest.
So you're probably wondering where the Moonlord fight is. So back in 2024, when I finished up that last recording, I had been suffering through lots of PC issues. My Windows installation was completely fucked, and I couldn't update my drivers for quite a while, to the point where I couldn't install a new OBS update. So I ended up getting it repaired, and for the most part, I did get my issues fixed. However, all my storage devices got reset, and I lost everything. The world is gone. It's been gone for several years. It's now 2026, and yeah, it's been long gone. And originally I wanted to do some more stoic, like deep analysis of how my mental perception about video games and how my relationship with video games has changed. But honestly, I think that was just because I was like trying to rationalize losing the world earlier. But at this point, I'm kind of okay with it. For the most part. There's no conclusion to this video, so it's kind of annoying, but I mean, you'll still be seeing this video because I put a lot of effort into it. And my relationship, funny enough, my relationship with video games has changed over the last 2 years. I used to be very into FPS games, and I was kind of changed it up a little bit. I don't play FPS games as much aside from Team Fortress 2, and I've been playing a lot of games with a new group of friends, which I've been hanging out with on Twitch for a lot of the time. And yeah, I actually think doing these Terraria videos has helped me develop a more healthier relationship with video games, and actually putting myself out of my comfort zone and trying a couple new genres in the process of it. Even though I didn't beat Moonlord and I didn't complete vanilla Terraria, I still think it was a valuable experience for me, and I'm willing to share that. I don't really have anything like stoic or inspiring to say. It's kind of it. This is it. I can't really draw like a really cool conclusion here, so it's the end, really.